Hey everybody, Dave here. Hope you're having an awesome day. So, if you saw my last build, it was the Coca-Cola build, and I used the legs from this, an ATST, and these are all the remnants and the scraps, and I was saving everything because this little piece right here looks awesome, and I think I can turn this into a speeder, so come on, let's try it. So I love it when you find something at the thrift store for $2.99 and you can repurpose it multiple times. So these seats are great. There's some great components here that I'm going to keep. But this thing right here, as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is 100% a speeder bike. And this plate here, I feel like I could use that for the base for where the feet would go on or something like that. So I think the first thing I want to do is trim this off. So I got my little hobby saw and I'll just cut this off. Didn't quite fit in my little stand, so got that trimmed off. This post was a little too long, so I went ahead and snipped that off, and I'm going to use that as supports. And as I pieced it together, I wasn't quite sure if I want to go, this way, so I'm going to flip it and try it on the back side. Not quite right. But when I put it on, I noticed that the angle of it is definitely not going to work. I don't want it to crash into the ground. So to fix this, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut out this inner section here, clean that up a little bit. And then once I set that in, now I can have it nice and parallel to each other and acts as a nice foot plate. All right, now that it's all glued up, we'll just piece these two together. And there it is. That's looking great. Now I got this weird hole in the bottom, so I'm gonna have to come up with a solution for that later. But I'm also thinking about the front end of this speeder bike. They normally have those cool little plates, so I was looking at that and I was like, maybe I could do something with this. And that looks more like a ski skid or something. And then I found this piece here. It's a wing from something. I think it's something Star Wars, but I honestly don't know. But those pieces there are so cool. They look really mechanical. So I'm just snipping them at an angle. It actually had kind of that angle built into it already through the panel line. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it and dry fitting it. And I think this is going to work out pretty nice. I do want to fill these screw holes, so in order to do that, I'm going to just use some Magic Sculpt. You could also use Milliput. I think there's also the green stuff. It's just two-part epoxy. Mix it together, mash it up, and I can kind of smash in those holes. I'll flatten everything out, and then what I'll do is I'll let it dry, and then after it dries, it's rock hard, and then I can sand it out. And here it is after the Magic Sculpt has dried. Just give it a nice little sand. Wipe that down. That's looking great. Go ahead and move to the front wings. I went ahead and kind of sanded it at a little bit of an angle, gluing those things on. And I think this is looking really nice. It has a really good speeder bike feel. Now I was looking at this piece here and I thought maybe I could add like an exhaust. So I went ahead and I drilled a hole and I used a heat gun to kind of shape and form it. And then once I got that how I wanted it, did a little bit of glue, glued it in place, snipped it off, and I think that's going to work for now. For the little wing supports, I did the same thing, just took a little piece of polystyrene rod, glued that on, and I think that gives a nice kind of structural support to the bike. It makes it look pretty cool. So I got that Lego piece, and I think it's going to act pretty nice as a control panel for the bike itself. And then I'm going to add some additional wiring. And I just wrapped it once around the polystyrene tube, glue it in place, and I feel like it gives a really cool mechanical feel to the speeder bike. Now, this exhaust thing ended up, I thought it looked kind of wimpy, almost too small. If there's something on your build that you don't like, don't be afraid to just rip it off and come up with a different solution. So what I did instead was I took a thicker piece of polystyrene, because that under part was a little blank, and I thought, what if the exhaust came out from there? So I snipped it off at an angle. I think it looks almost like motorcycle exhaust. And then where the old exhaust was, I just drilled a hole through there, and I'm going to use that as my support to actually mount it onto my wooden base. All right, next we'll take it outside. I'll give it a silver base coat, and that was just rattle can silver. I've got the Citadel green, and I'm going to paint certain panels of the speeder bike green, just to give it a little bit of variety with metal and green. You can see even on these little fins, I left some of it metal, some of it green. Gives a nice balance on the bike itself. Now that this is done, I'm going to paint the seat black just because it got sprayed silver. I'm going to go ahead and paint these wires black because they got painted silver. And then I'm going to drag some brush marks to make it look like the cannon's been shooting. Got a couple of little darker greens that I'm just adding some speckles on there. And then I'll throw a wash over the entire thing. I'm using my Vallejo wash because my Citadel wash is out, but it gives me pretty much the same effect. Got this chrome pen off of Amazon, and I'm just dragging along the edge just to give this metal scratched and worn look and feel. And overall, I think it looks pretty nice. It is a little bit strong, but then I'm going to add some rust to it a little bit later. While that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of Mod Podge. You could also use just Elmer's glue, and I'm sprinkling some dry. It's actually tile grout. Brushed a little bit of additional tile grout on the front there. Use some Vallejo wash for my rust, and just kind of thinking where rust would collect and gather. You can drag your paintbrush down, smear it with your finger just a little bit, and it gives some really beautiful rust streaking and drips. I have this little pigment here. It's just a powdered pigment, so I was just playing around with it. I haven't used this stuff a lot, so I'm not super great at it, but for this bike, because it is a little bit dusty, I think this works. These are some decals that I made. I just went online and found some control panels and made a water slide decal. You can see I added a couple other little decals from an old model kit. Add a little bit of additional color onto the base. I'm going to paint the base entirely black. And I think what I'm going to do is put the bike on it, and we're going to call this one done. All right, that build was actually super fun. And the one thing that I want to try and reiterate on my channel is sometimes they can be super simple. It doesn't have to be this crazy complicated build. So I say get some components and just try and put some stuff together. If it doesn't work, that's not the end of the world, but I think you'll be surprised how easily things can come together, and it doesn't have to be that complicated. So yeah, I like it. It's fun. Let's do some turnaround shots of this thing, and as always, it's a great day to be a toy nerd. Have a great one.